Hey everyone, Pugs here with two new reviews for y'all. Today I'm covering Pests and Komputer Overload. So I don't want to call these episodes forgettable because they aren't, so what should I call them instead? I guess they're known episodes, but not especially liked. In fact, Pests is especially disliked. Can you tell I'm struggling in finding what to say about these two episodes for this introduction? Guess that means I should just move on. As always, thank you all so much for watching and supporting the channel. I appreciate you all very, very much. And now, let's just get right into it. As I said in the introduction, Pests is a disliked episode. However, I wouldn't say that this episode reaches the point of infamy or notoriety, only because I don't see a lot of people talking about it. And I think that if it weren't for certain mid-2010s cartoon reviewers, most people would have forgotten about this episode entirely. But that's just, my opinion, though. Alright, let's just get this show on the road. So, as this episode begins, I gotta admit I don't like SpongeBob's vibes here. I know I sound ridiculous, but I don't know, man. This is something I've been noticing a lot, and it's heavily connected to that fucking design of his that I can't stand, with that small mouth and rounded cheeks. And speaking of that fuck-ass design, why are other characters getting in on this shit too? Patrick's had it a few times now, and even Mr. Krabs has it in this episode. Please make it stop. Anyway, back to what I was saying about the vibes. So, it's hard to describe these vibes. It's like a false delicateness, I guess. It's just strange, and not in an appealing way. Like, in this beginning scene, for example, SpongeBob runs so weirdly, almost like it's exaggerated ballet or something. His body should not be moving that way. And yeah, I know that's a bit absurd of me to say, given that this is a cartoon, but I feel the way I feel. And another problem is that all of the movement feels too slow. I'd say this could mean there's an animation limitation here, but these odd vibes feel purposeful, so I'm not so convinced. This moment is altogether similar to the one in Boating Buddies with SpongeBob running all, I believe I said cube-like, but that moment was a lot funnier to me because it felt like it was supposed to be funny, while here it's just strange and feels like a flourish of some kind. Moving on just a little bit, the next issue that I have with Pests is kind of related to this, as it's a design problem. I mean, I don't think it's a very unpopular opinion for me to say that I don't like the design of the worm. I'm pretty sure that it's supposed to look ugly, but why? Why are we taking notes from the splinter right now? When the worm ends up giving birth, literally, why are we doing this right now? I wouldn't say that it's quite as repulsive as the visuals of the splinter, but it certainly got some pages from that episode's book, and it's still not a pleasant sight. I guess this episode review is just going to be a list of issues in somewhat chronological order, because the third issue of this episode comes up once SpongeBob brings the worm home. Why is SpongeBob an incompetent pet owner in this episode? I don't get that. Not one bit. And this is one thing that I truly cannot stand about this general era of the show, seasons 6 through 8 for the most part. This constant making SpongeBob incompetent when it comes to taking care of his pets. Even at his worst, in Have You Seen This Snail, SpongeBob has never been so reckless and incompetent with Gary. He knows how pets work and how to take care of them. So why, in this episode, is he acting like he has no idea that snails and worms don't like each other? This shit is also weird because we've seen SpongeBob treat Gary as far more of an equal in multiple episodes, while in this episode he almost acts like Gary doesn't even have sentience. And yes, I know, this show isn't consistent, but I mean there's certain things that I'd prefer to stay consistent, and this is one of them. SpongeBob also generally treats Gary pretty bad in this episode, such as making him sleep in a closet to make room for this random-ass worm, and that is what I truly do not like. The final big issue I have with Pests is that there are quite a few moments that lack humor. Wouldn't be a meh episode without that, would it? The part where Mrs. Puff has a very similar moment to Choir Boys, it went on for too long and was not as funny as it was likely supposed to be. In fact, I didn't really find it to be funny at all, but I can at least understand the thought process behind this joke. Alright, I've been somewhat hard on this episode. Let me switch gears and say that this episode does indeed have some funny moments going for it. Like when Gary ends up attacking SpongeBob and Patrick just dips on out of there, that was hilarious. I definitely needed that after being subjected to everything I just said about SpongeBob's incompetence with Gary. And then when Larry ends up wanting to eat the worms for raw protein, that made me let out a startled chuckle because that got morbid real quick. And then later on, the part where Mr. Krabs tells SpongeBob that he's 3 hours late, I love how we cut from SpongeBob screaming on our screen to him screaming on the phone. That was pretty funny. I also love how Mr. Krabs was just hiding out in a trash can. That's so random. Well, it's more likely that he has a money sense, and so he just teleports to wherever money is mentioned. Either interpretation is funny to me, so it doesn't matter. And then the ending joke of the episode is cheesy, but I still like it. So, since I've basically committed myself to not being particularly chronological during this review, let me go ahead and say some other things I liked in this episode that don't really have to do with the humor. I liked that Gary ended up defending his territory, because that's my goat, y'all know that, but also the fact that the worm ends up abandoning its babies because of that. Well, that makes no sense at all, but okay. I also like that we get to see lots of different characters in this episode, since lately so many of these episodes have been feeling rather small and isolated with the same 4 characters being used again and again. And then the scene with SpongeBob rescuing the worm babies from being run over was pretty entertaining as well. Bringing it all together now, Pet or Pest is not as bad as I thought it might have been. Now, it's not a good episode, no, but it isn't horrible. Or, the last few minutes of the episode are pretty good, while the beginning ain't good at all. Ugh, it's so hard to rate episodes when they're like this, like when they aren't internally consistent when it comes to quality, because what takes precedent in my judgment? The good? The bad? The average of the two? Well, in the case of this episode, I think what's taking precedent are the general feelings I have on it, which are slightly negative. The good stuff just cannot completely make up for all the unpleasantness we were forced to deal with during the first few minutes, especially with everything involving my boy Gary. So the setup of Pet or Pest is not good, basically. And then when SpongeBob is trying to get rid of the worm babies, that part isn't exactly funny, only decently entertaining, except for the part with Mrs. Puff. It's not until we get to Larry that the episode starts being actually good, and by that point it's a little too late. So that is why this episode belongs best in my mediocre tier, where it comes in with a score of 5.6 out of 10. Computer Overload, also known as the episode I constantly mix up with Karen 2.0, even though I never mix up Karen 2.0 with Computer Overload. Maybe that alone tells you all you need to know about my feelings on this episode. Probably not, though. After all, I have a reputation for yapping in a roundabout way to express my opinion, so I should probably do that, right? Well, one thing that immediately stands out about Computer Overload is that this episode features the return of Plankton, who we haven't seen in quite some time. Surprisingly, actually. The last time we saw the little green man was in The Krabby Chronicle, which I reviewed just about 2 months ago now. Kinda weird. However, with Plankton's return also comes him being infected with that goddamn rounded cheeks design. Why? Is anyone safe from this? Please make it stop. I can't stand this design at all. Am I the only one who feels like that? It would be so funny if I was, and I'm just screaming into the void here. Anyway, it's nice to see Plankton going about his daily life in the beginning of this episode. Honestly, Plankton working the drive-thru is such a mood. People can be very unreasonable at times. And I liked the bit with the very obviously inedible chum at the very start of this episode. Karen and Plankton's banter is also very fun to watch, and I like all of the visual gags in these first few minutes as well. I love how Karen literally does not care and continues to roast Plankton. And while I'm here, let me just say that I love Karen's voice. Jill Talley does an excellent job as always. So, Plankton thinks that he can replace Karen, and Karen decides to get the hell out of there when Plankton does. I like the way the show makes all their conflicts just marital spats, even though I fully recognize that until much more recently, it was that same misogynistic trope of the hyper-competent woman and foolish man. That's been changing in recent episodes, though, as they've given Karen a real personality, and this is coming from someone who likes Karen throughout the show, but let's be real, her character was just an accessory to Plankton for a while. The rundown of Karen's replacements is pretty entertaining, and it has some pretty funny moments. Karen's continued roasting of each robot is great. The bit where Plankton goes and gets a picture of him with hair is pretty funny, and then the part where that one robot just ends up hammering him is hysterical once we see Plankton's flattened form. Always some good slapstick when Plankton's involved. And then I like how Karen eventually just has enough and leaves, because Plankton is indeed being incredibly unreasonable here. Computer Overload continues to be rather enjoyable once Karen leaves and Plankton starts treating the robots like they're his underlings. The whole "does everybody understand" part was pretty funny to me. Not sure what else I can say. And then I love the part where the robots assemble. It's giving Power Rangers. Or, I guess Voltron? I never watched Voltron, but I did watch Power Rangers Samurai. And then the shitty design of Plankton's robot being noted by Perch Perkins was also a nice touch. We finally see SpongeBob after a whopping 7.5 minutes. And this ain't me complaining, not at all. It's just strange for an episode to be without him for this long, especially prior to season 9 or 10. And SpongeBob's absence makes sense anyway, since this episode is about Plankton. Poor SpongeBob gets thrown to the wolves in this part too. Honestly, Plankton's robot doesn't even look intimidating. I love how Plankton's threats don't even work on SpongeBob, even if this does mean SpongeBob has to have really low comprehension skills here. Once Plankton starts descending on the Krusty Krab, I love how everyone reacts. Mr. Krabs trying to get everyone in fighting shape, SpongeBob panicking, and Squidward not even caring. And then I really love the reveal that the big, intimidating robot was literally plugged into the wall. Plankton's plan having such a fatal flaw makes perfect sense. Like, this is the guy who put a coin-activated self-destruct slot in his own robot all the way back in season 2. He ain't the most reasonable guy. Plankton's dramatics about losing here are fun to watch as well, and I'm really glad that at the end of the episode, Plankton gives Karen an actually decent apology. Good. I believe that Computer Overload is a hidden gem. Like, nobody's ever talking about it, but I actually enjoyed it a lot. And I always forget that I actually like this episode, probably because I always associate it with the more memorable Karen 2.0. But no comment as to whether I even like Karen 2.0 more than this episode. There wasn't any part of this episode that I specifically disliked, and there were a lot of funny moments. The humor wasn't the best, nor was it always there, but in the end, that's perfectly fine because the entire episode was amusing. So that's why this episode belongs in my great tier, where it comes in with a score of 8.3 out of 10. As always, I'll be ending this review with some closing thoughts of mine. Although, with these 2 episodes, I'm afraid I don't got very much I could say. These aren't 2 episodes I spend a whole lot of, thinking time on. I mean, I could always say something about the reputation of Pet or Pests, but there's no specific thing to point to for why people dislike this episode. They just don't like it. Similar to how I feel about it. I guess that's why it's not particularly infamous. And as for Computer Overload, yeah, I got nothing. I will say that I think that around this era of the show, like season 6 and 7 for sure, maybe 8, we got a good number of these episodes with Plankton and Karen getting in a fight and that driving the plot in some way. And these episodes are of varying quality, but I do find it interesting how the show really started to lean into their dynamic as a married couple around this time. I will say, though, that Karen not having much of a personality outside of tired and or nagging wife is something I'll never be a fan of, and this is thankfully something that the show improves on in later seasons. Just not now. Oh boy, not now at all. And I think that's really all I can say about these 2 episodes. Wow, look at me, I turned nothing into 2 paragraphs of something. Anyway, I'll go ahead and leave y'all here, and I'll see you all in the next review.